Hello and welcome to another Dose with Tosh. This is Toshi's Talks. I'm now got a chat with Alex Fauvel. So really looking forward to this. Just going to be discussing everything that's going on in the Bitcoin space, all the backstabbing, all the gossip, all that kind of stuff. So very, very much looking forward to that. But before we start, experience the best of both worlds today at betbitcoinsv.com, the best casino and sports betting on chain. Have a little flutter in private using the original protocol and genuine Bitcoin. Right, let's cue the music.
SirToshi, like a cowboy in the West, riding on the blockchain that they call the very best. 1 million strong and transactions flying free. Just wait for the Teranode, you'll surely see.
There we go. Alex, are you there?
How's it going, SirToshi?
It's very good. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. This might be our first, is it not?
I think so, yeah. I've been watching your show for a long time, but yeah, it's the first time actually joining you.
Oh, what, mate? I'm honoured. You know, I thought this day might come because I remember watching you when you were talking about was it 2 Hop Ventures you were involved in or something like that?
Yeah. Back in 2018, 19, really started it up. 2019 was doing that for the past 6 years. Yeah.
Is that still going?
Yeah. We're fully distributed now. So that means we've invested all of the available capital into our portfolio companies, and we're in the harvest stage. Hopefully, we could set up another fund, but we'll see how the industry develops with this sort of initial start we've tried to give it.
So do you think you'll actually make more of a return investing in Bitcoin ventures rather than actually purchasing BSV itself?
That was the plan, and is the plan. We've had that kind of confirmed over the past 5 years, in that the coin price itself has plummeted, much to the dismay of a lot of us proponents of BSV. But some of our startups are doing very well. Others have been collateral damage of all the politics and everything that's been going on. So although it's been a tough road, it's definitely been the correct decision. It's just a question of how the next 5 years turn out, really, because some of our startups are doing very well. Someone's at my door. 1 second, sorry.
That's all right, mate. That's fine.
Where the cornfields, down in a small town where the cornfields grow high. There's talk of the future and a man.
Sorry about that.
That's all right, mate. I was just playing a little music there while you were gone. All good?
Yeah, all good. Just had to let someone in.
That's all right. That's all right. Yeah. So we were just talking about 2 Hop Ventures and making more money from investing in Bitcoin companies rather than actually investing in the coin itself.
Yeah, just because we don't really know the whole usage of the coin yet, and it's going to require quite a lot of recognition from the wider public for those returns to be realized. Whereas if you're building an enterprise software company, you don't necessarily have to make the sale to the millions of people around the world. You only have to make the sale to some boardroom executives. However, a lot of the boardroom executives look at public sentiment to make their decisions, which, most companies say they're data-driven, but really they're market sentiment-driven. And that's something that you really need to take into account when you're trying to build a B2B business.
Yeah, very true. So you were around during those days in 2020 when Craig gave notice to the market with regard to rolling iceberg orders.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So what's your opinion on those, knowing that they didn't happen?
Well, I would say that they're probably currently happening. If you look at the
Yeah.
transactions on chain, I mean, it seems to be pretty obvious that uh, a large miner from the past is selling.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
we have also seen some transactions from the Patoshi, is that what they call it? Uh, Miner sell. So that would suggest that the BTC core version of Satoshi is also moving coins at the same time Craig is supposedly moving coins, which I think should suggest that they're related in some way. But yeah, it's going to be a long while to sell that number of coins onto the market with and get the maximum returns from them without spooking the market too much. But yeah, I think it would be better if this was resolved as fast as possible. But I do understand the strategy of maximizing the return and value that you do have to, you know, effectively get dry powder for the next stages of the battles.
So what do you think his do you think that's what he's trying to do? Do you think he's trying to get maximum return on each of those orders without spooking the market? Or
I
do you
would,
think he's actually intentionally going to spook the market?
uh, well, you can do both at the same time, right? But you always kind of pull the punch of uh, your warning. So he has fulfilled his legal obligation, right? With the warning, effectively saying that there's going to be rolling out icebergs and so on and so forth. Um, but at the same time, he's withholding certain positions, which everyone is well within their right to do, uh, that ensures that nothing is concrete until the last moment necessary, giving everyone the opportunity to make the decision for giving them as much time as possible. It's kind of like the opposite of the Trump order about Operation Warp Speed. You know, he sped that process up so that people had the freedom to make the choice as fast as possible so that they could get along on with their lives. With this, it's almost the opposite in that he's giving the market the as much opportunity as they need to find the truth out for themselves as opposed to being told, which I think is very noble, but it's also very painful for a lot of people.
Yeah. So are those notices that he's given to the market? Are they still what's the word? Still
Still
valid?
relevant.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know the law enough to know like the time frames because it's kind of like statute of limitations, right? How long is that notice valid for? Craig said, after you've got like 6 months until they start. I mean, maybe they did start then, and it's just there's so many coins that he structured it that it's going to take 5 years. You don't really know until it's happened, and the public disclosures, if they're fulfilled properly, you never really know what happened on the other end of it either. Because Craig's filings aren't public.
Yeah. Yeah. So are you familiar with my theory on what the purpose of the Tulip Trust was?
Yes, to effectively give the market a common opportunity to rally around this thing as without an authority, so it cements it as a commodity. And I think that's a brilliant theory and probably well worth the consideration of also security. If it's a wild success and someone wants his coins, then they've got to get through a legal structure in a trust form, which is obviously one of the most secure ways to do it.
Kind of that was more the purpose of releasing the white paper before starting the network. and then using a pseudonym and all that. But
Yeah.
the actual Tulip Trust itself, the 1.1 million Bitcoin, actually had a purpose. And
Go ahead. Yeah.
you haven't. I haven't told you that, or
I
you're not.
can't immediately recall what the purpose is that you say it is, but
Okay. Yeah. So
I'm
let's get
interested
into
now.
this then. Awesome. So, the 24-hour trade volume of most market traded items, like if you look at the stock market and all that, is around 5%. So it's the trade volume that sets the market price, which then obviously works out the market the market capitalization of the share, if you like. So if you want to wipe something out, all you need to do is wipe out the 24-hour trade volume, which is 5%, and 1.1 million is 5% of 21 million.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And so, because the Bitcoin protocol is a commoditized protocol, and therefore doesn't have any central point of authority or control, it means that it's vulnerable. And Craig wouldn't be able to come out and prove who he was until the network had gone through this neutral organic growth phase, which came to an end on the 1st of January 2020. So he knew that the powers that be would probably attempt to corrupt Bitcoin while it was going through this neutral organic growth phase, and Craig couldn't come out and say who he was, because that would have undermined the network's classification as a commodity, because he would then start to have influence over the growth of the network, and it wouldn't necessarily be neutral and organic after that. So he was just like, right, if they do this, if they corrupt my design, I am going to need an insurance policy in place, an economic insurance policy in place, to move all the value.
About like an economic kill switch.
Yeah.
Right. That's a very interesting theory.
Mate, I'm telling you, that is exactly what it was for. Because
do you think that is pre-planned though? Because I know a lot of these theories are beautifully set up, right? Looking back on it. I would say that Satoshi is probably among the smartest people on the planet. Can you really plan this far ahead?
Mate, he's Asperger's. He can't help it. He's Asperger's. He can't help himself.
Yeah.
That's how I would respond to that. Literally, plotting, scheming, you name it. He's thought of it, and knowing how fast his brain is, like his brain is phenomenal, mate, phenomenal, But again, I mean, this is one of the reasons why he sort of changed his plan, and because when he started Bitcoin, he couldn't afford to start it with anybody else because they would have spilt the beans, and also. One individual has to be responsible for starting the network because that's where accountability lies. You can't have if
there's no legal if there's no legal person behind it, there has to be a natural person behind it ultimately.
Yeah, and that's where accountability lies, because all change of signatures lead back to the Genesis block. So therefore, it's the signatures it's the chain of digital signatures that lead back to the living men and women, behind the transaction. And so that's how, because Bitcoin, when he said in section 2 of the white paper, we define Bitcoin as a chain of digital signatures, he wasn't referring to Bitcoin as in the Bitcoin itself. He was referring to Bitcoin as in the network, the Bitcoin network. And it literally is a chain of digital signatures secured by an economically competitive, globally distributed server network. That's literally what it is. It's like a private association. So
that's how people interact with the blockchain using keys, as in persons, legal and natural persons. And if you remove the signatures, it becomes inert. Like it's no longer sovereign.
Yeah.
Right? People say, "Oh, it's great that Bitcoin's non-sovereign," and it's not sovereign as long as it's common, and we don't know. Not that we don't know who Satoshi is, but we have had the opportunity to grow this naturally without Satoshi's influence. And it's your sovereignty that secures the money, and it does that through the signatures on the money. And if you remove the signatures from that, it's no longer your sovereign property.
Yeah, you have no claim on it. You've got no claim on the transaction. If your signature's not on it, it's the signature that authorizes and validates a contract. If a contract doesn't have these signatures on it, then it's null and void. You can't enforce it. And it's the same with a Bitcoin transaction. If you have no claim on it, then that contract has no contractual credibility and therefore no economic value. It's absolutely essential that it has the signatures on it, and again, this is why the network had to be started by an individual, and he couldn't afford to have other. Well, there's two things. One, the network had to be started by an individual because it's that individual that is solely and responsible and accountable for starting the network. And secondly, he couldn't afford to have somebody else that he was potentially working with let the cat out of the bag and go, oh yeah, I started the network with Craig. Because the network had to undergo this period of neutral organic growth. So because he was doing this all on his own, he literally had no one, to confide in or anything like this, and had to sort of keep himself quiet. He
did have Dave, but yeah, I don't know how close their relationship was once the paper was written, and how much Dave had influenced the decision making. I think people like Hal had a lot more influence over things than Dave ever did.
Yeah, but Hal only came on the scene after the release of the white paper.
After, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So in a sense, even though Dave was involved, it was Craig that was committed, as it were. Like in Scrum stuff, they call the product owners and things, people with the actual responsibility, pigs, and the developers, chickens. Because if you open a restaurant and the menu is ham and eggs, the pigs get committed, but the chickens are just involved.
I like it. Yeah, very good.
So Craig was the pig of the project, and yeah, he was also the chickens, but getting advice from other chickens.
Yeah, pretty much. So I would say that because he was literally on his own, when he started this, and basically had to kind of like remain on his own or sort of work in the shadows, he couldn't start broadcasting who he was and all that, because he would have risked letting the cat out of the bag. He was just like, right, if these bastards do corrupt my design, what can be done about it? And so the Tulip Trust was Bitcoin's insurance policy. It wouldn't be required if they hadn't corrupted it, but if they did corrupt it, then that insurance policy could be used. It's collateral, for want of a better word.
I've never really thought about the design of a system from the creator of Bitcoin to act as a kill switch if things got out of control. But now that you mention it, it seems like a vital part of any system that you're trying to design like this.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, because it had to go through this neutral organic growth phase. And
it's more important than a kill switch to AI, because AI, at the end of the day, you can just unplug a machine. Whereas this system, there's no off button because it's a protocol that people use.
And all the miners are running this protocol, so there's no like you said, there's no kill switch.
There's no technical kill switch, but I mean, Craig is economically minded. That's how he discovered Bitcoin, and I would call it more of a discovery, because blockchain did exist beforehand, but he realized if you put it in a different sort of situation and give it certain properties, it becomes an economic system of security. So the kill switch would have to be economic as well.
Absolutely. And also, so it was the way I liken the Bitcoin protocol is a bit like if somebody was to say to you, who invented the concept of the number one? How would you respond to that?
They discovered it more than it's like Indians invented zero as a concept, but they didn't invent it. They discovered it because it's always existed as a concept, and you can't. It's irreducible in terms of its fundamental nature. And if you look at Bitcoin's design, it is almost irreducible. There is nothing there that doesn't need to be, and everything there is there for a purpose. Even the double hash, right? Even that's got a purpose. And people would go, well, it's a security vulnerability. Yeah, well, it might be, but it's an economic efficiency gain. So it's worth it.
Yeah, I would say that the concept of the number one was expressed because the concept has always been there since the beginning of time. What it took was for somebody to express it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say it's the same with the Bitcoin protocol. I would say that Craig expressed it.
Yeah, and he demonstrated that he expressed it with the white paper. I mean, you can build any blockchain to scale effectively. You'd have to choose a scripting language and certain algorithms, but that is the expression of what Bitcoin is. Well, and we still haven't really seen that yet. That's the other thing. That's how complex this software is that we haven't seen a proper validation of all of the elements in that paper. And it's basic stuff, just like pruning and SPV. And the privacy element is there because it's default, but the other privacy things that you can do with script are always going to be very interesting.
Yeah. Well, when you say the other elements of it, the blockchain, as I try and describe to people, is just simply the process that the data goes through in order to be uploaded onto the network. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Every piece of data goes through the same process, and if it doesn't go through that process, it's not really part of the blockchain. It can be logged on the blockchain, but it's not been validated.
Yeah, but I mean, anyone can create a blockchain. It's just simply a way of tying data together, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So if the foundations of that chain have a single central point of failure, then that entire chain of data is vulnerable.
Yes.
So XRP and all these other networks that aren't even distributed, let alone economically competitive, have a single central point of failure. So all the data could be lost in one foul swoop.
Yes. But it's kind of worse than that. If your leader in that network can be subverted, right? You get a change in the hands of authority, and those people like to change the rules. Just because that's kind of why they want the power in the first place. But with Bitcoin, Craig nailed it when he said there is no power here because the protocol was set in stone. So although you can massively economically benefit from the protocol just by being a miner or by being a user, everyone's on the same understanding of there isn't any power in trying to change it because everyone knows what the rules are here.
Yeah, well, are you familiar with the 5 elements that I've come up with that basically commoditize data?
Yeah, I am, but go through them because they're always so fantastic. And you must have memorized them so many times because you talk about them so much. But
it's the only reason I talk about it is because it's the only reason everybody goes to these blockchain and Bitcoin conferences and stuff like that is because they want this information. This is what they're all searching for, and no one's talking about it.
They always get it in like little different snippets. They never really get the whole thing together, and because they never really get the whole thing together, they can be subverted into going, oh well, we've got a trade-off here, like the trilemma. This trilemma means that you've got to make a choice between these 3 things, but we're not going to tell you about these other 2 things that are vital to this whole concept.
Yeah, yeah. And like one of the five of the other vital things besides having an economically competitive distributed foundation, and then having all the data linked together via blockchain technology, you obviously need unbounded scale so that limitations and restrictions can't be manufactured and the network not be manipulated. Because if it could be manipulated, you would end up with what we've got in BTC, which is child pays for parent replaced by fee, all this nonsense about getting your transaction jump into the front of the queue.
Okay, wait. What's wrong with child pays for parent as a concept?
Child pays for parent. So is that where the initial payment is broadcast? Which is the child, and then you need to add a bit more to it in order to pay for that transaction to be processed.
Well, yes, but there's a use for that, right? I mean, like, say you want to come up with a protocol to send money between a user and a merchant. Well, you don't want the user to pay, but you do want them to send you a transaction. You don't want the user to be paying the mining fees, right? You just want them to pay for the good or whatever. They send you a transaction, it hasn't got a fee attached, so you send another transaction, your transaction, that pays for the whole data packet. There's nothing necessarily wrong with doing that, but the way Core use it, in that you can use it to add more fee, is incorrect.
Well, it's ridiculous if you want a smooth economic system to have.
Because you shouldn't be in that situation in the first place.
Yeah.
You should be getting a quote from a miner of how much does it cost to put a transaction in this block. They tell you, you construct a transaction with that, send it to them, and then it's done. Then they're on the hook for sending it into that block.
Well, I mean, I would say you shouldn't even need to be contacting a miner. I don't want to be ringing my telephone company before I send a text message.
No, you don't have to ring the miner. They kind of give you the cost in their Coinbase, right? If you've got the headers, you can pull down some Coinbase transactions, and should be documentation in there to tell you how much it costs per transaction, per byte, per operation.
But you want that transaction fee to be so minimal that you're not bothered about it.
But if you're processing billions of transactions for your customers every day, you need a system architecture of how these fees are dealt with. And sometimes it's easier to just kind of go, we as a company will pay for them on behalf of our users. And, you might want to just kind of go, well, I'll do my wallet doing free transactions, but if you use my service, I'll pay for your transactions to get them on the blockchain.
All right, but a service like that on BTC that can only manage 7 transactions per second is completely ridiculous.
Yes.
Well,
really ridiculous.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It's just it's ridiculous.
My point is that child pays for parent as a transaction structure is fine on BSV, unbounded scaled Bitcoin. Like, there's no reason why it should be disallowed. But in BTC, it's obviously mutated to the whole point of, oh, well, if your transaction hasn't got enough fees to get into this block, then you need to add some on top of what you've already paid, because they've got a quota.
Well, yeah. So what I'm saying is they are artificially manipulating the network due to their restricted block size, so they can probably charge higher fees and reward the miners. They're like, oh yeah, you've got to pay a little bit more to reward the miner. It's complete and utter manipulation. If there was unbounded scale, there wouldn't be that manipulation. You could just simply have that service that you've spoken about there. Whereas, like, look, if you are massive scale, I mean, I'm just talking about the average retail user. Going down the shop. I don't want to be contacting miners and all this business. If I'm paying like literally thousands of a cent, I really don't care, because that means I've got to make 1,000 transactions even within a day before I've even. I mean, it's 100 even if we were just talking about a tenth. But I'd have to make 1,000 transactions a day before I'd even spent a penny. And how I don't even send 1,000 emails a day. Nowhere near that amount, let alone actually
You
buying.
do probably click on
stuff.
1,000 links a day, though.
Do you know what? I might look into that.
Or consume 24 frames a second of video content.
Yeah. I mean, there is that, but I mean, what we're talking about there is Bitcoin being used at scale, and when Bitcoin is being used at scale, with the amount of Bitcoin that I'd already purchased in order to use the network, I would have multiple millions of dollars worth of value, and therefore I really wouldn't mind spending a few thousands of a penny.
Yeah, of course.
If that makes sense. So what I'm saying is that all this child pays for parent on BTC and replaced by fee and all that, they are manufactured to manipulate the network. We need a network that can't be manipulated, which is where scale comes in, and then you've got maybe cost efficiencies to maybe consider if you are that large. But we're just talking about general retail right now, the average sort of like standard user. You then just need to make sure there's a fixed token supply so that nobody can inflate it or deflate it, and then just make sure that those elements I've just mentioned, which is economic competition, chain of digital signatures, unbounded scale, fixed token supply, are locked in place and can't ever change. That is literally the protocol, and anybody can make that. But what they can't make or replicate is the neutral organic size and growth of the network.
Yeah, so that's already 15 years in now.
Yeah, and every year that goes by where Craig has not been recognized as Satoshi Nakamoto just gives the network even more strength. Because now if any commoditized protocol does come along, they're going to have to try and grow it for 15 years without finding out who started it.
It's an impossible task these days.
Yeah, pretty much.
I would say that, like, maybe Monero would have the closest thing, but it's kind of screwed in the first place because of the signature types.
It's there's no accountability there, and if there's no accountability,
it's the same problem as what we were talking about before. The coin is a chain of digital signatures. In Monero, you've got a ring of signatures, so it's kind of like in terms of accountability, you're either all accountable or you're all accountable, because it can't be none of you accountable.
Exactly. And the whole point of having the chain of signatures is that it moves accountability and responsibility away from the miners who are sustaining the network and onto the users, because they are responsible for how they use it. But the point I was actually going to make with regarding to this 1.1 million that Craig put away in the Tulip Trust to be used as Bitcoin's insurance policy, should it be required. Actually, I've forgotten the point I was going to make there. Oh my god. Yeah, that's it. I've got it. So, so when Craig put out the notices to the market saying, this selling is going to coincide with a block reward halving and blah 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 blah. It was someone that actually wrote to me, one of my network contacts, and said, "Look, Toshi, have you seen this? I've been watching this. I've been watching the ebbs and flows and movements of these BTC for about the last sort of 3 or 4 months now, and there is 1.4 million BTC lined up that look like they have no other purpose other than for a straight dump." And I was just like, well, who's got 1.4 million BTC to do that? And I was just like the only individual that could potentially have that much and would be willing to use it as a straight dump would be Craig. And also him being...
Oh, you're saying that the selling hasn't started yet. Their movements are going to the exchanges, but he hasn't started selling.
Well, all I'm saying is back in 2020, someone had 1.4 million BTC lined up, ready to go. And my thought was, well, the Tulip Trust is 1.1 million, and
yeah, but until it's moved on the chain, then how can you know it's for sale?
well, exactly. Just speculating, but it looked like they were being lined up, ready for a dump. So,
Well,
what?
it would be interesting to know who that contact is.
It would. It would. But what I'm saying is, from my point of view, when I saw it was like 1.4, I was just like, well, Craig is a Spurgist and doesn't like to leave anything to chance. So I'm suspecting that 1.4 would be 1.1 plus another 300,000, just to be on the safe side. Just to make sure, little cherry on top, a little sprinkle in there, just a little bit extra. So a bit like when he started the network on the 3rd of January 2009, it's a 10-year growth phase means there is a 99.9% chance that no other network will achieve that level of neutral size and growth. But because it started on the 3rd of January 2009, that's effectively 11 years. So there's that little bit extra. So not only is it,
it would have taken a few months to at least start setting up these entities. So that's your year delay there.
Yeah. Well, how do you mean setting up these entities?
Well, you've got to have the coins to put them in a trust.
Oh,
you set up the
yeah, but what I'm saying
set
is,
up the trust and then assign the coins to them.
Yeah, but it wasn't actually the coins in the Tulip Trust that were being used.
Oh, you're saying, right, okay, yeah, because Craig has mentioned he might have 25% of the supply.
Well, yeah. So what I'm saying is those Tulip Trust coins, I don't think they would be safe to move until at least everything has been cleared up, the market has decided that Bitcoin is BSV, and the world acknowledges that he is Satoshi Nakamoto, and therefore it doesn't make any difference once they're moved. So I don't.
Right, okay, so he wouldn't have been the cause of it, you mean?
Yeah. The Tulip Trust wouldn't be. He's distancing himself from being directly involved in it. So this 1.4 million BTC was not the Tulip Trust BTC, but it was the equivalent amount of.
Yeah.
So but he wouldn't mind. He wouldn't have mind sacrificing those 1.1 million because that's what their purpose was for anyway. And they're assigned to him anyway.
Just coming from a different place. They're just coming from a different place from his perspective.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So he wouldn't have minded. But my thought was that it's interesting that it's 1.4, and like with the growth, it was actually 10 years and 362 days. Like effectively, so it's like a little bit extra. And again, with the 2 months reasonable notice period, it was 31st of October to the 3rd of January, so it's 2 months and 4 days grace, just that little bit extra. So when I saw it was 1.4 million, I was just like, that's got Craig written all over it, in my opinion.
Interesting theories. I like it. The movie's going to be amazing when it does come out, or whatever it is, whenever it's made. It'll never represent the true reality of what happened there.
Yeah. It's staggering. But do you think that things have worked out better now with those with potentially that 1.4 million not being used back in 2020, or do you think it would be better if he'd used them and crashed the market and caused all this chaos?
I always think people should be given a choice, and whilst each individual is not the market, they are part of it. And if you step back from not altering market trajectory, that is reflected in the market always, because you're kind of saying, oh well, what I want to do is too big for the market to handle, and so it'll have irrevocable damage on it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'll tell you my opinion then. So I would have thought that trashing the market in 2020 would have been an absolute disaster because the utility just simply wasn't there. It
Yeah.
just simply would have been economic power. Miners would have had no choice. Um, they would have come over, but criminals in the network would have lost billions of dollars. They would have been pointing the finger squarely at someone else's shoulders. You know whose, which would have put him in an extremely vulnerable position for the powers that be to find a volunteer to do something rather nasty to that individual. And then they could have spun the narrative and said, "Oh, look, the entire market is centralized. It flipped on what one man did or said. You can't trust it. Don't use it. Get back to us trustworthy central bankers."
I mean, it definitely could have gone that way. That's the other thing you do have to consider. The market sentiment is created by what's happening to Bitcoin, and if you kill that, then maybe the jerk reaction is it's all going away, and then we're put, I don't know, 10 years, 20 years back because no one wants to touch it ever.
Yeah, yeah.
There is a lot of considerations to be made. And I think probably the healthiest thing would be to uh, not crush it. Unfortunately, how much people want that to happen, and especially on our side, I don't think it's the correct thing to do.
Well, I don't really think they wanted to trash it, but I mean, when looking at the figures that I do every day, it looks to me as though the miners are going to be economically incentivized to switch their hash rate over to BSV due to the block fee being absolutely astronomical once Aerospike start using the network.
So that's another consideration, right? Is that this money's only moving on BTC. It's not moving on BSV. So actually, the subsidy of projects from Craig's side could be huge to get the miners interested in this technology. Now we know that the Aerospike database is able to do the scale required for some of the, things like Project Babbage's CPU, which just consumes millions and millions of transactions.
Can you
Just
tell me a bit about that?
well, yeah, it's operating. It's basically a CPU coded logic
CPU
into
being
script.
computer processing unit.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. As in the same sort of architecture that is running your computer right now.
Okay.
It's the same basic logic framework encoded in Bitcoin script. Fourth is already that a bit, but there's more more complex logical circuits that you have to make as well. And they made that and just stringed it together so you can effectively do anything that your computer can do on Bitcoin script, which is really cool. I'm not sure how much future application it's going to have at this point, but as a demonstration to the Oracle databases of the world, the Googles and so on and so forth, it's like, well, this is what we can do. And then the rest of the industry should recognize, why aren't these social media and search companies talking about this other database that can obviously handle what we're asking it to?
Holy shit! I didn't realize that.
Like if you wanted to hit the blockchain ecosystem from both sides, you would limit the economic return that the BTC's side would get and increase the side that BSV would get. And you'd use your resources to do that. And, if you're talking about spending the actual Bitcoin itself, subsidizing actual economic transactions on the network itself in a granular fashion so that the world can see what it actually is doing. isn't a bad way to do it. I don't know whether Craig's going to do that. I would hope he does, because, well, we need some narrative change as opposed to, you know, it's coming, because the world is tired of waiting at this point.
Well, you know, good things come to those who wait. Patience is virtue.
Yeah, but in this lifetime, yeah.
Well, I mean, I would. Well, knowing that I suspect it was going to happen in 2020, I suspect he's been, because that was his initial plan, was just simply to use the Tulip Trust. Whereas when he changed his mind, it's like, right, what this really needs to have is utility on the network, because, as you know, Bitcoin's an economic model. So you need the block fee to surpass the block rewards, and I suspect that that's what Craig has been putting the metal to the, putting the pedal to the metal, doing these last 4 years since 2020.
He's got the software now. Teranode forms, hopefully.
Yeah. So talking about Teranode, that actually brings us on to Shadders.
Yeah.
And Teranode. Can we talk about that for a bit?
Do you want to talk about Craig's recent tweets on Shadders? Because I think that's pretty poignant as to what's wrong with the tech world.
Yeah. Let me just bring that up. Here we go. Got it. Right. So I'll read it out. So Craig has written, and this was today, a couple of hours ago, actually, just now. So he said, Steve Shadders once released a version of Node software that he, demoed demoed at a conference, attempting to prove its capabilities much like Teranode. But the truth, he said, it didn't work. What's worse is that I later found out he had fabricated the results. He fraudulently represented his demo on his laptop, claiming it handled 50,000 transactions when it did no such thing, smoke and mirrors. So when Shadders now complains about being removed from the Teranode team, there's a reason. There's no place for dishonesty in this project, and pretending to achieve something when you haven't isn't innovation, it's fraud. And then he continues saying, Steve claims it's hateful to call him out. No, this isn't about hate. It's called truth. People don't like being exposed when they've been less than honest. But that doesn't make it hateful. The simple fact of the matter is, lying and hiding what you've really done isn't right. When you present something that doesn't work and then you try to pass it off as a success, you've deceived everyone involved. It's not about personal feelings or grudges, it's about integrity. When you fabricate results and mislead people, there are consequences. It's not hate to call out dishonesty, it's necessary. He said, let him try to sue me for defamation, go ahead. I've got the emails where he admitted to fraud. This isn't about personal attacks, it's about facts. Fraud is when you knowingly promote something as working when it doesn't. And that's exactly what happened here. Steve presented software, made claims about its performance, and deceived people into believing it could handle 50,000 transactions when it absolutely couldn't. He knew it wasn't functioning, yet he pushed it as if it was. That's not a mistake, it's fraud, plain and simple. So if he wants to take legal action, I'll be right here with the evidence in hand. Alright, if Shadders wants to keep slandering me, go ahead, keep running your mouth, like so many others before you, but here's the deal, I've got the emails. You keep pushing, I'll start releasing the details of our communications, and then everyone can see for themselves just how deep and dishonesty runs. I'm not here to play nice or sugarcoat anything. You want the truth, you'll get truth. So keep it up, and we'll let the facts do the talking. You can judge for yourself who's been lying this whole time. And then Jay perhaps has said, why wait? Shadders has long since slandered you without remorse. You can play nice. If it were me, I'd shut him up hard and fast. And Craig has said, if I shut him up, the outcome for him is prison. When you stand in front of an audience and you lie about a product, you don't just lie to me, the world. There's a name for it, and it's a criminal charge. But yeah, that's kind of like the end of the thread. I mean, that is massive. I was taken in by all of that stuff. I think that was the conference that was actually done online, wasn't it? At some point in 2020 during COVID and all that crap.
Yeah, I was in Switzerland. I was there. I was also on the stage with Steve for something else, the Bitcoin Technical Standards Committee.
Right.
Um, yeah, I didn't know he was.
Surely, I mean, surely Steve wasn't working on his own. He would have been with a team, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I mean he had an entire team working on that apparently. Did the team? What was the team doing the entire time?
Well, yeah. I
Why
mean, what about that?
why
What about the London? What about
where
the
was the
conference in
failure?
London when he brought all the team up on stage? Yeah, when we gave them a
Yeah,
standing ovation. What was all that about?
uh, them looking for recognition for not doing their job, I guess. Um,
Oh my god! Wasn't that to do with like returning to Genesis or something like that? Was that like they called it the unfucking, didn't he?
yeah, he did.
So did they
Yeah, he did.
actually? I presume they actually did that, but then there was nobody working on Teranode.
Well, there's the rejigging of the protocol to put it back what it was, and also the optimizations for Teranode, and then but the optimizations for Teranode are also building a database structure that is able to handle the commits to the blockchain uh, data architecture. Right, there's a lot that goes into that, but the approach that they were using, I think, for a while was effectively microservices and microarchitectures, but then they went back on that and then started doing other things. And I guess that's when they realized they couldn't pull it off. But the team now has recognized that actually the the software you need to build is more about database architecture of the data architecture of Bitcoin. So you need to marry those two things together elegantly. And if you actually look at how the Aerospike database works, I recommend people do that. You can just go to YouTube. There's some good videos on it from, I think, 6 years ago or something, 2015, uh, about how they've actually architected that. Because something that you don't might not know about Aerospike is that they are able to read and write data as fast as the hard drives, which is kind of unique. It's not unique, but it shows you the speed and precision of what they're doing. And if you look at how it's built as well, it's effectively a RAID system, so you kind of get redundancy for free as well. Very cool.
Redundancy for free. What does that mean in layman's terms?
The way they put the data packets and how they commit them to your server uh, is effectively in a RAID system, so that you create a matrix of ones and zeros for each hard drive. And if one hard drive fails, you've got a hard drive at the end that's done a calculation across all of them so that you can replace the hard drive and get back the data from before that you lost. It's basic stuff. It's been around for ages. But their database kind of does it for free. There's nothing new you have to do about to it, as far as I understand. Um,
Okay, and they're going to be using the Bitcoin network to just
no,
store.
no, no. The Bitcoin network is using Aerospike.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay, so so they're going to be using Aerospike in order to scale these transactions, and they're all going to be recorded on the Bitcoin ledger.
Like Aerospike is a way to build a database, and the that is being packaged into how they're building Terranode. So effectively, they're a customer of Aerospike.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, all of these transactions that they generate are going to be recorded on the Bitcoin ledger after they've generated them. Is that right?
They're not creating transactions themselves. We still need bit apps to do that. businesses. But if Craig was smart, he would spin up some demonstrations, or at least, unless they've already got customers that are ready to go. I kind of think if they had customers that are ready to go, they would have started already. Maybe they have already. It's just that their stage they're at now requires a lot less transactions than is needed. These cycle times in terms of sales take a long time. Sometimes you start with just a small little project that does maybe 1,000 transactions a week, and then if that's successful, you do tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands,
Well,
millions.
wouldn't Aerospike? I mean, if you've got a system processing that many transactions, I mean, surely you can't afford any of those records to be deleted. So therefore,
Yeah.
you'd want them saved on the Bitcoin network.
The Aerospike database is handling the data architecture of the Bitcoin network on the servers. So you've got multiple different drives and CPUs and hashers doing different things. You need to coordinate them, right? Aerospike is basically being used for that coordination.
Right. Okay.
So Aerospike itself is not generating transactions; it's handling them. And then
Okay.
we still need
Okay.
businesses out there to generate transactions. But the good thing is that because we've got a demonstration of them generating millions of transactions per second and processing millions of transactions per second, the software's there for them to utilize to do whatever they want to do with the blockchain at that sort of capacity of 1 million transactions per second.
Okay. Okay. But
That makes sense.
somehow all of those, well, somehow whatever company like PayPal, for example, is using their services for records to authenticate payment transactions, for example. The storage of that data would be enormous if you were just going to store it on servers. So therefore, surely it would be a lot cheaper to store it on the Bitcoin network.
No, the Bitcoin network is more expensive than just regular servers. Only slightly, but it's you're paying for the security because you're paying for the redundancy. You're paying for a lot of things. Until I don't know the full features of Teranode. Maybe they've already got prices for data retention. I have no clue. We'll have to see when it comes out.
Okay, so where does the blockchain fit into all of this?
You can do financial transactions into company, into person, uh, much cheaper, much more secure, and provable. You're pooling the cost of security, right, into the transactions. So everyone's paying to ensure that their transaction is immutable and permanent.
Okay, so in terms of sort of financial transactions and paying for that, and again, the issue that people have got at the moment is the volatility in the price, and people don't like the idea of, you know, paying one thing and then the value that they've received like dropping through the floor.
Yeah, that's only if you're buying Bitcoin to use it as a financial instrument, right? If you're buying it to use the Bitcoin network, then you just buy it as you use it.
Yeah, but then when you buy it, then that's your demand, which through economic forces of supply and demand increases the price because the
It's
supply is fixed.
it should stabilize the market. It gives the market a constant buying demand, right?
Right. Well, if there's constant
Because
buying demand and the supply is fixed, then the price doesn't stop going up.
well, if there's no constant selling demand, and the hope, I guess, with Bitcoin and Bitcoin maximalist is that the buying demand never stops.
Mm.
And it's a question of what form of currency does the buying demand never stop from?
Well, people,
Because
if people are receiving value in exchange for something, if that value goes up, that's fine. No one's got a problem with it. It's only if the value goes down, and if there's
it's also
constant
okay
buying.
if there's constant buying, it just might mean that the price is stabilized. Because if once these people buy it, they then use it on the Bitcoin network, and then the Bitcoin miner has it. Can that Bitcoin miner use it to pay their costs, or do
Yeah.
they have to convert it into something else? We don't know how this entire economy looks yet, because a lot of people think that the miners on the other end will just use the Bitcoin in the economy as well. But that might not necessarily be the case. And it would be great if they could, but the
Well,
world is a
economic
dynamic place.
incentive would kick in if the price started going up, because at the moment, all the businesses, well, the entire world planetary trade is using a toxic medium of exchange, toxic due to the effects of inflation. So, if you have a medium of exchange that is divisible instead of inflated, then everybody's going to jump on that. And therefore, the price will start moving northwards. But when you're saying, it might stabilize, I would suggest that the price would only stabilize once it hits its saturated potential market capitalization.
Yeah, of course. But we might be at that stabilization now. I don't
No
think we
way,
are.
mate. No way. No
It's a
way.
question of how we use this, right? I would like to think that it goes up massively, but you can't guarantee that, because with Trump coming into office, obviously next year potentially, uh, with this Department of Government Efficiency headed up by Elon Musk, apparently, uh, the remit he's given them is to come up with a plan within 6 months of their incorporation to eliminate payment fraud. And that to me sounds like a very BSV orientated request.
Mm.
Because how does he know that's even possible? Because is this a test of that department? I'll find out whether they know what is possible or not. Because if they come back to him and say it's not possible, if he knows about BSV and stuff, he knows that they're completely corrupt.
Mm.
But it's a question of how this game is being played, because as we've seen, it takes a long time for these realizations to happen, at least in the public eye. I am of the firm belief now that there is an understanding that humans are coming to, that the people that have been ruling the world, so to speak, the upper classes are playing a very different game to what everyone else is. And it's just a question of how disgusting the game is that they're playing, and how long it's been going on. I think people are starting to realize that it's been going on for centuries,
Yeah.
if not longer.
Yeah, it has. Well, I'm just conscious of the time. Mate, this has been great. We've been going for like an hour, but just in case we do decide to maybe wrap it up in a minute.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah. Oh, good.
If you want to wrap up, if you want to continue, either one's fine for me at the moment.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Well, we'll tell you what. Yeah, we'll just see how things go in the next few minutes then. But so I presume you're familiar with Craig's talk that he did in Tokyo in 2017 with Jerry Chan, where he said, if we make the network scale, if we make it bigger, my compensation, more than anything anyone could ever pay me, is the price of Bitcoin goes up. So that's my pure drive. And then he said, I want Bitcoin not to go up to 10,000 or 100,000. I want it to be worth millions per Bitcoin. That's it. That's what we spend money for. It's very simple. And that's like pretty much verbatim, word for word there. So he wants it to be worth millions, and he's admitted that, even though he doesn't talk about it now. But I also interviewed him in London. I think that must have been maybe. I can't remember when it was.
I think that statement was in Arnhem, wasn't it?
What about it wanting to be worth millions?
Yeah.
No, it was Tokyo 2017.
Right,
Yeah,
okay.
got the recording. But also, I interviewed him at a conference in London, and I was curious as to how big he was thinking. Because, everybody sort of wants to know, what price, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, well, I didn't really want to ask him about price, but I did want to know how big he was thinking. So I just did a little bit of research, and I saw that the market capitalization at that time for global e-commerce was $29 trillion. So I just said to him, I said, look, is the market capitalized, or is the market that Bitcoin is effectively going for that of global e-commerce that currently has a market capitalization of $29 trillion? And he simply said, no, that's too small. And I was just like, right, that means he's going for everything. But then another question I also put to him was that, well, if the market capitalization of Bitcoin does hit $29 trillion, with how many decimal places? How many decimal places has it got at the moment? Is it
trillion?
Is it 8 decimal Bitcoin? How many decimal?
Bitcoin, yeah, it's 8 decimal places.
8 decimal places, yeah. So he actually said to me, because I said, well, look, if the market cap gets to $29 trillion, that puts each coin at, I think it was like $4 million each or something like that. And at with 8 decimal places, it means that micropayments are no longer available. So, there's a real problem there. And that's when he said, well, the decimalization in Bitcoin can be increased to 16 or more decimal places. So he's already planned this.
He also said in the past that you can't just increase the number of decimal points because that's the same as increasing the supply, which I've always agreed with.
It's not increasing the supply because you're dividing it.
Yes, but what you're actually doing is making fractional satoshis. So the core protocol, right, should not increase in the number of decimal points, but the overlay networks that you use can fractionalize the satoshis. There is no need to increase the number of coins or increase the number of decimal points.
I'm not talking about increasing the coins. The supply has to be fixed, but it can be effectively divisible to a point where the amount of increase is insignificant in terms of its value.
This is getting. It's not increasing in value; it's staying the same. You're increasing the number of decimal points. Or are you talking about the wallet software? Because the wallet software doesn't have a decimal point. It's all just.
No, I'm talking about the value because let's just play games here. So what do you estimate? Because let's go back to Hal Finney. So Hal Finney on was it the somewhere? Actually, I can't remember. January 2009. Hal Finney had estimated that the value of each coin would be around $10 million.
Yes, and he got that from global GDP, didn't he?
Let's find that out.
This is one of my first questions as well. What could the potential market be? When I first got into Bitcoin in 2013, it's one of the first questions you asked. So I was trying to figure out how to calculate it. I thought global GDP was a good way to do it. At the time, global GDP was there was a CIA fact book that had these statistics in, and I don't think that it's still online, which is very annoying. But In 2009, they had the figure of 21 trillion, which would put each coin at 1 million, and that means a Satoshi would be 1 cent. And that felt very, very engineered to me. Because if you're thinking of, well, how many units do I need for this system? Well, what does the world currently run on? That's the immediate answer. So you go to world GDP or world M1 money, or one of these sorts of numbers, and then figure it out from there. That's what I would have done, and I'm pretty sure that's what the creator would do as well, because you do need to know that sort of information. But of course, if the world's granularity in terms of economic value transfer increases, is that enough? Well, how much do you really care about a cent in value?
Yeah, well, so I'll just read out what Hal wrote here. So he said, as an amusing thought experiment. Oh, this was 10th of January. 10th of January 2009. He said,
So, like, yeah, the first day.
Yeah, yeah. He said, as an amusing thought experiment, imagine that Bitcoin is successful and becomes the dominant payment system in use throughout the world. Then the total value of the currency should be equal to the total value of all wealth in the world. He said, current estimates for total worldwide household wealth, and again, this is household wealth, not corporate wealth. He said that I have found a range from 100 trillion to 300 trillion. With 20 million coins, of the 21, that gives each coin a value of about $10 million. Now, I would actually say that my point of view is that fiat currency is a unit measurement of value without any value, in the same way that a kilogram is a unit measurement of weight. If you said I had a kilogram, your question would be, well, what do you have a kilogram of? Same with a litre, unit measurement of volume. So in the future, you're not going to be selling your house for £250,000 worth of nothing. Because that's the value. The value is £250,000. So you're going to be swapping it like for like, which means that value needs to be there in Bitcoin. So you would sell your house for £250,000 worth of Bitcoin.
Mm.
So therefore, basically, Bitcoin has to take on the market capitalization of every single financial market that is currently measured in fiat currency. The whole lot. Everything.
Yes, but the problem with doing it the way Hal did it is that people's net worth isn't in cash, or that liquidity does come from the global market. But when you're selling these things, you don't have that money for very long necessarily, because you want to transport it into a asset that is going to grow, like shares in a company.
Or like Bitcoin.
Well, if Bitcoin's reached saturation, that
a good
growth
point. So
isn't necessarily there.
What is your estimate on saturation?
Well, over what timelines?
Doesn't matter.
At the moment, we're at saturation. If you're talking about worldwide saturation,
Yeah.
I mean,
hyper Bitcoinization.
It could get to those ridiculous levels. I wouldn't want to put a number on it, because then you're actually questioning the value of the dollar at that point.
Well, yeah.
Is the dollar still in circulation if hyper Bitcoinization is around? Oh, and if you look at the US, what is it? The debt clock. Have you been to this website?
Oh yeah, that is nuts.
Yeah. Recently, they've put out their new hint, or I don't know what they are doing, but it's very meme-like. They've got old dollar versus new dollar, and the other one is the old dollar is like, what is it? Is it $104 trillion in debt or something? And then the other one is $104 trillion in dividend. Where is it?
Okay, and who do you think it's in debt to?
The private cartel of central banks. But
where do the banks get this from? Where do the banks get these dollars to lend?
They invent them with their estimations of how much the economy can handle.
So it's fraud, basically. They're making out from nothing.
Yeah, that's what the charge is effectively. Yeah, so this is it. I'll send it to you. I still got a message.
Are you sending it to me on Signal?
Yeah,
Oh, cool.
there we go.
Let's bring this
So
up.
it's just a JPEG of interest on the debt, $1 trillion, yearly dividend 1.5.
Let's bring this up. Yeah, so when they say, you're in debt or we're in debt and whatnot, you can't actually be in debt to someone who made something up from nothing because it has no value.
Yeah.
Which means this entire debt clock is just the amount of fraud that's being perpetrated on the world.
Yeah.
There we go.
It's why, isn't it?
Yeah, so I would say that if it's a genuine money is going to have to be fixed in supply and effectively infinitely divisible, and data can be infinitely divisible because you just simply add a zero. Whereas currency has to be inflated by its very nature, even if it was genuine. Let alone if it's not and doesn't represent anything in value, you can inflate it into infinity. So if you can inflate the debt into infinity, then effectively the value of Bitcoin is almost infinite. You just have to look at the rate of increase, which will obviously diminish once it passes 50% of its potential market saturation. So again, what would you estimate the market saturation to be?
Yeah. Between 1 and 10. Between 1 and 10 million.
Per coin or market saturation?
Yeah. Per coin, but that's at market saturation if we've still got the dollar around. If we've still got all these other currencies around. I mean, I'm pretty sure none of these fiat currencies are going anywhere anytime soon, and I wouldn't necessarily want them to when we do reach saturation point, because I would like to have a stake in the nation's growth that I am, most in, participating in their economy. And you want to sometimes make a specific bet, not a general bet. So at market saturation, you would be taking a neutral bet that everyone is just kind of going to grow average pace. But if you trust in your country and that it's going to do well economically, then you would want to hold its currency. You'd want to hold its assets. You'd want to hold its bonds if they still have them. I'm assuming debt is not going to completely disappear, but it's going to be more accountable. And I would assume that the contracts are going to be something like, you can't take out debt to pay for your life that you're just passing on to your kids, your generation. Assume it'd be things like that, but I don't know how it would work.
Yeah. All right. So I would say that my personal estimation on this, looking at all the combined markets, is like so the derivatives market, because there has to be something of real value in order to represent the expressed value. Like, $10 or £20 or €20 is nothing. It's like, what is it of £10 or €10 or $10 do you have of that value? So I would say that Bitcoin has to take on the total capitalization of all financial markets, which I would say the derivatives market between 800 trillion. Oh, sorry. I'll just turn that one off. That's my theme tune for my phone. I would say sort of the derivatives market estimated to be between 800 trillion and $1 quadrillion. That dollar amount has to there has to be real value behind that in the future, because fiat currency has no value whatsoever. So I would say, as a rough estimate, just simply divide $1 quadrillion by 21 million, and you come up with a figure of around sort of $40 million per coin.
40.
That's what I think.
40 million.
Yeah, at
I mean, I don't know. It also depends on how long it takes, right? If it takes 50 years, then the value of a dollar is 99% less of what it is today. So 40 million is too little.
Yeah, I'd say it's a conservative estimate. I would say it's probably going to get there exceptionally quickly because, like I said, people need something of value to represent the expressed value. Because $50 is nothing. It's like $50 of what? $50 of gold, $50 of silver, $50 of Bitcoin. And because the whole world runs on, digital information, and digital information can be moved as fast as and efficient as light.
You're effectively making it like a byte. It's like you've got 8 bytes. But it's a question of what are those 8 bytes. In Bitcoin, it's not a question of what are those 8 bytes. It's okay, well, you've got the standard unit of Satoshis.
Yeah.
And then you spend them on unique things.
Yeah, but as a rough estimate, I mean, this is kind of like why I was asking, do you think you get a better return investing in those Bitcoin businesses rather than sort of buying the coins? Because I was explaining to someone at the Bitcoin conference in London, at the moment, every single corporation is valued at its share price multiplied by the number of shares issued. That's how they would value a company, and the share price again is just simply set by the 24-hour trade volume, because it's the amount of dollars that people have got spare or whatever it is they want to use to invest, as it were, in that share that sets the value of the company. So in the future, I would say that a company's value will be set on how many Bitcoin they hold and the value of those Bitcoin.
Not hold, I would say turnover. Because it's not right. It's about your value add in terms of the economic transaction. How many of the Bitcoin can you skim off the top from your customers for providing the services that interact with the blockchain?
Yeah, but when you would still have a set amount, because I mean, just like you hold on to shares, you would hold on to Bitcoin because they would be your savings. They would be going up in value.
The value of a company is not necessarily derived by how many shares of other companies it holds or whatever. It's
its own shares.
It's derived by it's derived from how well it transmits money through it, and value and products that customers buy.
But in terms of the metrics that a bank would use in deciding whether or not to lend to it, they would just simply look at its value by working out the value of by multiplying the shares of that company by their market price.
Well, it's not that simple, but yeah, that's one of the metrics they look at.
Yeah.
I mean, as the rough estimate, when you first look at a company, yes, if you can even see if there is even a market to set the price of those shares. If there's only the founders.
If you go on Yahoo and all that, they're all measuring Microsoft and Google by the they measure a company by their share price, don't they? And how many shares are issued.
Yeah.
So in the future,
and that means Bitcoin SV right now is valued at $1 billion. And a lot of people say that, especially in the finance world, will say they won't even look at something that's worth less than $1 billion. And to be honest, that's probably what's setting the price of BSV right now, that $1 billion limit. Because they obviously don't want any of the financial heads to look at it. So that it would make sense if they suppress the price down to that level.
Yeah, good. I absolutely agree with that. So do you think the price is being artificially suppressed by the BSV that they stole during the delist BSV campaigns in 2019?
Yes.
Me too.
Of course. I mean, they removed the coin entirely from the exchanges in a cartel-like fashion. So yeah, they of course have been suppressing it as much as they can.
And
It's a question of really if they are keeping it at this level just as, uh, like in these movies when they toy with their victim and they're keeping them in James Bond, they always monologue and stuff forever without actually killing him.
yeah.
Do you think it's kind of like that? But at this point, it's because they can't kill it. I mean, they've done everything they can, really, including sue the creator.
Yeah, yeah, and well, also with the supply being fixed, they can't suppress it forever.
Yes.
And Craig did
Yeah,
say at one point they're running out of their supplies.
yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they were running out. I mean, the Craig's problem is that he can only sell the Bitcoin he has once. But that's their
Yeah.
problem as well, right? Both sides have the same problem as they can only sell the coin they hate once, and all the exchanges I think have basically taken that on and done it. So it's a question of now, will the market correct, and if so, how violently? I don't think it's going to be particularly violent because it's always the stairs up and the elevator down, is it?
Well, you don't. Well, yeah, but the thing is though, if the block fee, so the Bitcoin miners are not interested in number go up because it doesn't matter how much the number goes up. When the block reward goes down to eventually zero, they've got nothing
Only
coming in.
comes from fees.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they've got nothing because BTC doesn't really allow for fees. Certainly not 7 transactions per second anyway. So if you've suddenly got a network that is doing 1 million transactions per second, and the miners are the largest bag holders of coins, and they realize that they need to sustain their mining operation so they can continue into the future, and therefore they need more Bitcoin. It's not about number go up. It's about getting Bitcoin for miners. If they're just like, oh shit, we can actually get more Bitcoin over there. Oh fuck, we've made a massive mistake mining this shitcoin. And Craig has been economically incentivizing them off the chain by keeping the profitability so much less. Like between 50 and 60% less profitable.
Yeah, they can't actually acquire the BSV.
Yeah,
that's kind of why the hash rate on BSV is higher. It's a protection mechanism.
Yeah. So if you're the largest, if you're collectively the largest bag holders of Bitcoin in the world, in terms of the amount of concentration between you lot, and then suddenly they all realize at once they've made a massive mistake because they're not holding any BSV because they've been mining BTC all these years. Do you not think that there is going to be a massive bull run, like where the miners suddenly go, "Oh fuck"?
I would never bet on everyone understanding something all at once.
Yeah, but everybody understands number go up all at once.
That's that's already an assumption from the technology of its fixed supply. That is a very simple thing. This is a lot. It's also very simple, right? In that to get economic value out of this network, you have to provide value, and the way you provide value is by processing transactions.
Yeah, yeah.
That is extremely simple, but it's going to be a lot more difficult whilst the coin prices are both in the gutter, because it's like, well, even if it does go up, if it could drop 99% overnight again, and you can always go lower. I think that's what a lot of people forget. Bitcoin can also always go lower.
But if people are buying it to use it, and like you said, it stables out, you've got constant buying pressure there. So if you've got constant buying pressure because they need it in order to use it, and somebody's trying to sell it, you just be like, happy days, I'll buy it.
Yeah, but that constant buying pressure has to come from people that want to use it, and because the reason I say use it, what I mean is that they have to dispose of it. They have to consume it they can't just sell it back onto the market.
Yeah, yeah.
If you've got people that are buying it as an investment and then they're not planning on consuming it, but they are
Yeah.
planning on dumping it back onto the market, it becomes a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, like
Until
in
you've
like an
got those
ETF.
continued buyers of use,
Yeah, yeah.
right? It's always a risky bet. And I believe that use will come once it's understood. Like we had that space with John Reed Stark on Friday. Was it Friday or Saturday? He's very good in that he's critical of crypto in general and all of these blockchain scams, and he goes through the court cases, the SEC's um, uh, bringing against these unregistered corporations. Um, and he said a fantastic quote of one of these judges, not one of these judges, a lot of these judges constantly use and cite the same cases for why these cryptos are effectively securities fraud scams. And it's effectively the culmination of even something fictitious can become a security. It doesn't matter whether it's fictional; it can still be a security.
Well, yeah,
These guys are saying, oh yeah, well it's digital, so it's not really, a contract. It's not really there. It's something else. And the judges are basically going, it doesn't matter how it's represented in the real world. It just has to follow these kind of properties that you come up with for Bitcoin from the Howey test, and it is a security. And they're all kind of getting a bit shocked, going, "Oh, but these laws are old." But of course, it's rubbish.
well, the thing
These
is,
laws
if
are built to capture anything in the future that might develop, and they've done their job at that.
yeah, well, even if something is a genuine security and secures your entitlement to something, even if you're selling like a fraud certificate or a token or anything that doesn't secure your entitlement to anything, and that's what securities fraud is, they still come under the definition of it's a security. So you've created
partly because the people are buying it just to make money. Like that's the only reason they're buying.
Well, people are selling it to make money. If they're defrauding.
Well,
them.
yes, but the people that are buying it are expecting a return on their investment.
Because they've been spun a yarn.
Yes, exactly. So that's effectively, if whatever you're selling meets that definition, you're erring on the side of being a security. That's why Satoshi said, we can't really sell this as an investment. People need to, they need to come to that conclusion by themselves. And that's exactly one of the reasons why Bitcoin is a commodity, because once it was first released, it was not marketed as an investment. It just became an investment as the market figured it out. And I believe now we can talk about, Bitcoin as an investment because the market has made the decision that it is an investment. But it's an investment because it's a commodity, not because it's going to return
there's no dividend.
Different money. Yes, and the kind of the point of a dividend, right, is you give your investment money and then you get different money back. Yeah, and you can get more money back. That's kind of the purpose of the company. But with a commodity, you buy it and then you hold it, and then when you deploy it again, you sell it. You sell the same stuff, so it's not.
Yeah, but what you're meant to do with a commodity is you buy it to use it. So you buy coffee to drink it.
Exactly.
You
That's
buy
what
gold to turn into jewelry.
People do buy commodities as an investment, right? People buy oil because they think it's going to go up. They buy gold because they think it's going to go up. They think, because they want.
Yeah, but it's going up against the dollar, which is constantly going down.
Yes, they want an exit from the depreciating fiat that we are living in. So they buy these things as investments.
So what is going to happen then when they are buying these things in order to escape from the ever depreciating value of the inflated currency, when the money that you're using itself is fixed in supply? Would that not generate the opposite effect? You're just like, actually, I'm buying barrels of oil, and effectively what you're doing is you're restricting the supply. That's what people have done with gold. Because the supply is fixed, if the more people who buy it and hold it, you're effectively holding the market to ransom because they haven't got actually.
Well, so you could do the
intention to use
same thing with oil, right? The thing with Bitcoin is that you can strangle the market, but you can never completely destroy it, because at the end of the day, people need to use their Bitcoin. They need to consume Bitcoin to send their Bitcoin. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like the oil company has a hose on the back of your car collecting all the fumes to regenerate the oil and sell it back to you, kind of thing. So it's a circular economy in that way.
So in that way, and again, this is what I predict. All those people who are hoarding gold and silver in order to escape the ever-inflating fiat currency system, if the world was to run on a Bitcoin standard, and Bitcoin is more useful to them than silver and gold that they're just simply hoarding, and more people are actually using it in the economy to buy things with, would there not be a mass exodus of the gold and silver markets?
Essentially,
Into
I mean,
Bitcoin.
that is a potential. In that Bitcoin's just easier to keep track of as well than gold.
Exactly. And it's easier to spend, and it's easier to
This
use.
is one of the things that John Reed Stark doesn't really understand, is that this is a development in our technological infrastructure that is not going to go away because it's too useful. And he doesn't see a use to it, because the only thing he sees is a bunch of people creating scam tokens.
Yeah.
He's looking at the internet, because he did head up the electronic division of the SEC, when it first started. He does know that the internet had value during that time, because that was simple. That was just communication infrastructure. He's thinking that this is a development of our communication infrastructure that isn't needed because we've already got communication infrastructure. He doesn't see the additional security benefits of having a public network, so that you can keep track of evidence, so that you can't delete shares and go, oh, this company didn't ever exist. That's why you registered it in the first place, so that you can keep track of all these shares and who they've gone to.
See, that's where those 5 elements of commoditization come in, because if the token itself is extracted from a commoditized network, then that token is a commodity, because it's that token that allows you access to the commoditized network. So you can't sort of buy the network, but you can buy the token. So you buy the token to access the commoditized network, and because the token came from the commoditized network, that it's that token that is then classified as a commodity.
Yeah, so like the only thing that you can use to consume resources on the network is the token itself. They can't be separated. They would have hoped that was, so logical that Lightning Network never got this far. You can't take the token off the network. Otherwise, you have a derivative. It's not the thing. It's the entire purpose of the blockchain in itself.
I think they've already classified the Lightning tokens as securities, because the Lightning network is just simply a centrally controlled non-competitive network.
They got a different ticker, right?
Oh, there we go. No way.
This is highlighting how insidious what the exchange is.
It's a massive scam.
Right? The legal requirement is the ticker. Effectively, they came to a consensus around what the ticker for Bitcoin was, and it was BTC. In 2013, there was a discussion of whether it should be XBT, because X is commodity, right? That's how you signal that whatever the ticker is a commodity, at least in the US. Is it the US or Australia? I can't remember. But that's a well-defined sort of standard, and BTC won out. And I was kind of always annoyed that it went out, because it should be X, because it's a commodity. And well, now we know why BTC won out and not XBT, because they wanted to make sure that it wasn't a commodity in every sense of the word, because they kept on changing it. They removed the signatures. They limited block size. They got rid of all the 5 pillars that you keep on talking about.
Yeah, they did.
And they're trying to get rid of the coin cap, but they kind of already did, because the Lightning Network and Taproot. So keep on talking about SegWit. I think you should also start talking about Taproot, because Taproot is one of the most insidious things beyond SegWit, because you can effectively have hidden contracts behind those transactions, and you don't know which one. You don't know how many of those potential contracts exist. So when you have a transaction on the blockchain, you don't know how it's going to be spent, and that's a bit of a problem, because if you're a user, how do you know you've got all of the information about your property? You can't. Like that, they've made a mathematical proof that shows that you cannot know whether you are the sole owner of that Bitcoin.
Oof. Jeepers. Jeepers.
It's remarkable what they've done, and now Coinbase has changed its terms and conditions with BlackRock to allow 12-hour withdrawals, because, well, maybe they looked at the code and figured out what they were trying to do, or maybe they did it in concert. It's very difficult to tell with these people.
Jeepers. That is out. I think there are a lot of people going to be really shocked when they actually. Well, the thing is, I mean, the developers know what they've done. And are you familiar with where I suspect they got the name Blockstream from?
Well, it's pretty well understood that they're blocking the stream of transactions, isn't it? I mean, there's been diagrams of dams and stuff to explain what the Blockstream company was actually built up for.
Well, I presume you're familiar with the name Larry Silverstein.
Off the top of my head, sounds familiar, but I couldn't tell you who he is.
Larry Silverstein bought the Twin Towers like 17 weeks before they
Oh
came
yeah,
down,
yeah, yeah.
and put the massive insurance policy in place. So he bought them for like 17 million and put an insurance policy in place of 4.2 billion.
Yeah.
You know, and during the collapse of between the first tower being hit and that coming down, there was hundreds of millions of dollars moved from Marsh and McClellan to AIG, using paperless transactions. So once the servers had been lost, and the servers were on the same floor that the planes went into, once the servers had been lost, the transactions were then no longer traceable, but they'd already been done. And the company that designed and developed those paperless transactions were called Silverstream. And so there is no way
This
that
was in your Silverfish
yeah.
documentary.
Yeah. And so I would say, if there is nefarious entities at play here, and they were just like, oh right, well we got a group of developers together and we called them Silverstream, and they're basically our top tech guys that do our bidding for us. Now we've got another problem. It's called Bitcoin, that runs on a technology called blockchain. What should we call these developers now that are going to try and solve this problem for us? Because Silverstream did so well. Well, why don't we just call it Blockstream?
It's like blockchain.
Well, yeah, because you're still using.
That's a good theory as well. I think that's probably quite likely, considering so much propaganda in this space, that it's difficult to know where things originate from. The example I gave you of the blocking the stream of transactions, I remember that came from social media accounts online. Was that planned propaganda as a steering you away from the truth? I don't know.
Yeah, but nobody would call their company a name that had negative connotations.
Your negative connotations are your perspective. It depends on whether you think it's cool or not. The image you're trying to get across for like a hypercar thing might be a cobra and a viper, right? That's in culture, basically every culture, a pretty negative connotation. But it's cool.
It's
So,
edgy.
yeah, it's edgy, exactly. And these people are kind of living on the edge. They like putting out these edgy sort of names that are sort of a bit negative, but also kind of questionable.
Very good. Mate, this has been awesome. Do you fancy doing this again some other time? Because there is loads
Yeah,
to
sure.
discuss. In fact, I mean, do you want to sort of make it a regular thing, like monthly, weekly, something like that?
Yeah, we can probably do monthly if you
Hey.
want.
Yeah, yeah.
Hopefully, we'll organize some sort of a topic to discuss each month. Maybe we
Yeah.
can get some suggestions in the comments.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, well, yeah. Never a dull moment in Bitcoin. There's always stuff to do. Right. We'll tell you what. We'll leave this show here because we've actually been going for 1 hour 45 minutes.
Oh yeah,
Which has flown by. So yeah, I'll leave this here, and to everybody listening, hope you enjoyed this. So me and Alex will hopefully be back for another one. But until then, obviously, keep an eye on the figures and all that, and tune into my show. And be aware, take care, stay safe out there, and we'll see you in the next one.